Breaking news from the stadium tonight as an anonymous fan foot the bill for 55,000 hot dogs, bringing that sweet tubed meat to everyone in attendance.
Free dogs! Yeah!
55,000 hot dogs? What does that even cost?
While the identity of this Frankfurter philanthropist remains anonymous, their all-beefy generosity will go down in history.
The new Mega Millions. More to win means more to give. How you spend it is up to you. Yeah!
For game odds and details, visit sceducationlottery.com.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck. Anyway, we are Why Does This Exist? This is our 151st episode.
Hooray!
Yes, and like I believe I said, I am Chris, and you are Rob, and we, yes, I said that already. Okay,
you did
good.
Say that.
Yeah,
Botch.
good. Wow. Now you can tell how tired I am. It is Thursday, June 12th, 2025 at 9:30 p.m. on the East Coast. If you are listening in to K. Billy swinging Sons of the 70s, your dial has changed. The show is now Why Does This Exist? We are a podcast that talks about the very weirdest in pop culture. The last episode we did Mortal Kombat. The episode before that, we did Stoner and Doom Metal. And then we did AI Art and Austin Powers and Curb Your Enthusiasm and Shadow of the Vampire. We are now going to do something, and this is the first time ever we're doing a show that was requested by one of you people. Yes.
Heyo.
One of the people who listens to this show. Why, I have no idea. But one of those people was so kind to request this over and over, and at the same time would not stop spamming us with all these goodies that we just had no choice. Some guy who I guess the closest thing to say is that he is a super fan ended up just basically telling us, hey, I really like your show. There's probably 50-something comments on the episode, all by the same guy, and it's pretty awesome. This guy requested ReBoot. He has also been trying to let us know when they're selling the complete collection of Bump in the Night. He even sent this stuff over to the creator of the show.
Damn.
Which, yeah, I couldn't even believe it. But I am trying to find the name, and I am having difficulty because YouTube is just kind of being a dick right now. So forgive me, but I will find these people. I will find this man. I will find these comments. I don't know how, but I will find them. Anyway, we are going to be talking about the TV show ReBoot. And if you have not heard of that program, you're probably not the same age as us. You're probably not in your 30s, and you've probably had a full and eventful life. But ReBoot was a very, very awesome and very, very fun show. And when I find the guy, I'll find the guy. But that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about. Here's the that. Oh my god, I'm botching this.
God, botch.
That's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. Rob, you take it away.
All right. So ReBoot was a CGI TV show. And it was a very early CGI TV show because it came out originally in 1994. And so this was like pretty like envelope pushing back in those days because most cartoons at the time were traditionally animated. But the mid to late 90s kind of became the era of CGI cartoon shows. You had this, The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, or was it The Real Adventures or The New Adventures of Johnny Quest? I don't remember. The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, I think. Beast Wars, Beast Machines, of course. So but ReBoot, I think, was probably the first one, if I remember correctly. I don't remember there being one before that. If there was, I never watched it. But anyway, the basic premise of the show is all the characters live in a computer, and it's called the mainframe, I guess, is the city that they live in.
The person's name is Andre Christopher Furtado.
There you go.
7334. Thank you, Andre. We really appreciate everything that you have done. Your comments will not go in vain. We are honoring your request. We love you too, brother. Thank you.
Doxed him.
No, that's his username. We didn't dox anybody.
Okay.
I'm reading the thing now. At Andre Christopher Furtado 7334 commented on your video. I'm not doxing anybody.
All right.
The people dox themselves these days. I don't know why.
Yep. Well, we're all connected to the internet no matter what we do. So there you go.
Yes, we are. We're all slaves to the algorithm.
Unless you throw your phone away.
Yes, go or live off the grid, which maybe we should all do.
Yep.
Just like Jesse Ventura.
So all these people live in this city called Mainframe, and it's a computer basically, and they're all computer I guess they're programs. All of them. This could be a precursor to the Matrix, I guess.
Kind of. They are kind of programs.
They're sentient AI basically that live in the computer mainframe.
Well, they're part of the games. The way that they work in the mainframe is that they're basically the they're basically NPCs or really just whatever else is programmed in any game that the user is playing. So the user at this time, they turn on the computer, they'd insert the floppy disk, and they are essentially the mechanics in the game that make sure that the game runs properly. So they're everything going on in the background of the game programs, making sure that everything works.
Yes.
They're the little bots in the background that do everything that need to do, and they're all that stuff.
Yeah.
And basically, what they're trying to do is just make sure that the user can enjoy the game, and they're always referring to the player as the user, because that's what they are. They're the person that's going in there. And I appreciate the tech lingo of the show that they were using for everything at the time. It really helped build the world and connect it.
Yeah,
even if they use it in a silly way.
It was used in a very silly way, and sometimes it's like it doesn't make any sense of what they're saying. Like, you could tell that it was written by people that probably didn't know computers that well, and we're just they were just using tech lingo because it sounded fun and it matched with the theme of the show.
Yeah, because this was this is the ground floor of CGI animation, really.
Yeah.
So very few people really knew what was even going on, and except for maybe the graphic designers of the show,
Yeah.
who but all of our hero characters are, most of them are guardians, or they're little bots in between
I
that
want to also
just kind
point
of
out
help run the servers and monitors and everything like that.
I want to point out that the naming conventions don't make sense for the show, because some characters are named after, something that would be in a computer or something tech or computer related, and other characters are just named like Bob. Hi, I'm
Yeah.
Bob. And Enzo, fucking Enzo, I guess he's Italian. There's, he's an
I
Italian
don't
computer
know.
program. So, but then you have Dot Matrix and Megabyte.
Yeah. Well, dot matrix they're like printers.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't really find that inside of a computer, but it would be attached to one.
Well, tech or related. It didn't have to be something in the computer necessarily to be named after, but
Yeah, or like Mathy or anything like that, or like even the comic relief guys are just hack and slash. So like slash is like more or less just like the just the slash keys.
Yeah. But then you have characters like Hexadecimal.
Yeah. Which she's pretty damn terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I was watching an episode with Hexadecimal, and I was watching it and just saying, how would this not scare the shit out of me as a kid? That's horrifying. Even some of Megabyte's stuff is pretty creepy, but of course you have the wonderful voice of Tony J, who is perfect in everything that he does. And so recognizable. He just steals the show. Tony J is the fucking man. May he rest in peace. Perfect. Nobody else could have been Megabyte.
Yeah. Yeah. He did a great job.
I mean, the voice acting for this show it's varying levels.
It's there.
It's for the most part it's there. There's some characters that there's some voice actors that are really good at what they do, and others that are just doing their best.
It's definitely one of the performances of all time.
Yeah. And then you get Megabyte, but from Tony J, which is ridiculous. And
well, that's almost
Hexadecimal is pretty good too, but nobody is better. Nobody holds a candle to Tony J.
That's almost how if you watch like Street Fighter, the live action movie, how everybody was very clearly phoning it in and just getting a paycheck, except for Raul Julia, who put on an Oscar-worthy performance as Bison. And it was his swan song, of course.
Yes, it was.
But yes, I feel like there's a lot of low budget, or I don't want to say necessarily low budget, but stuff that's directed towards kids so they don't know it better, because it's not for adults necessarily, that is oftentimes like this, where you have a bunch of like amateur voice actors, which again, they're not terrible, but they're not at the same level as some of the more famous voice actors. But then you have one that freaking like does this amazing performance, that's so beyond what you would expect for a kid's show.
Yeah, I feel that a lot of newer voice actors will cut their teeth on the projects for small children.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be judging their performances. Not to say that they give poor performances, but they're at a very particular level in their careers where they haven't become the people that they're going to be. And it's a little lower stakes. Not saying that they don't give good performances, but it's not going to be their pinnacle yet. Right. Yeah. So I think studios are more likely to take bigger chances on newer voice actors in the animation, in shows for maybe children who are
Yeah.
watching their first cartoons, really.
Yeah.
And then, and then you get the real money where you get the Saturday morning cartoons for
Mhm.
for that 8 to 10-year-old range, maybe even
Yeah.
8 to 12, where, and then you get to the middle schooler, like basically the 8 to 15 range is where you really start to get into like a big you start to get into the big pool.
Yeah.
And then with gaming, I feel like it's kind of the same thing as
Yeah,
ReBoot,
probably.
where they'll get the one actor that does an amazing performance, and then you'll get a few that you're taking more chances with that are a little bit newer in their careers.
Yeah. There's a big trend in gaming that's been going on for a while of getting one famous actor to have a comparatively small role compared to somebody else, one of the other characters that might be a lesser known actor. And so they'll have this one actor that's this gigantic like Hollywood actor, play one small role and have like a few lines. And I guess it's just like because they don't want to pay a lot of money to have like a big, except for the one exception to that, of course, is Hideo Kojima, because he has no qualms about using Hollywood actors as the main character, as seen by Death Stranding, with literally Norman Reedus not only voice acting but also motion capturing and being the face of the main character.
Bubba Wallace here from 2311 Racing. Funny thing about being fast, you end up waiting a lot. First to show up, first in line, then just waiting. Me, I rev up Chumba Casino. With over 200 social casino games, no slow lanes here. Why sit around when you can spin? I'm already racing. Your turn. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time on a fancy water bottle with ultra titanium alloy metal. You're not sure why you need all that. I mean, it just holds water. But you're getting it anyway. Because if you're hiking near an active volcano and you accidentally drop the bottle into molten lava, your water will still be icy cold. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For water bottles. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
I guess it depends on what your budget is, really.
Yeah, but you had a game like Elder Scrolls 4 that had Patrick Stewart play the Emperor, who gets killed in the first 10 minutes of the game. Spoiler alert.
That's funny.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, he's Patrick Stewart. He's in the game. Or they even do this in TV shows. When you have a Game of Thrones. When Game of Thrones came out, it was like playing up the fact that Sean Bean was playing one of the lead characters. And what do? They kill him in the first season. So they built this whole PR thing up over Sean Bean being in the movie, and then he dies. Or in the series rather. I
mean, it is Sean Bean. If anybody expected his character to live,
that would be
that's on you.
That would be really defying expectations, though, if they cast Sean Bean in a role where he lives throughout the whole series and survives to the end. That would have been
that would be really funny.
That would have been defying expectations, especially in a movie a series like Game of Thrones, where people just die. Main characters are dying left and right.
Yeah, it would be pretty funny.
Make Sean Bean the one that survives to the end.
Yeah, nobody would see that coming because Sean Bean is basically the Kenny of show business. He just dies. He just dies in everything.
I think there's only like one movie that he's in that he actually doesn't die at the end. Or some in the middle. I mean, in freaking, what's that movie with freaking Christian Bale? Equilibrium. He dies in like the first 15 minutes of Equilibrium. Again, spoiler alert.
I've actually never seen that.
Oh, it's pretty awesome. It's kind of like cheesy story and dialogue wise, but the action sequences are really good.
Okay.
Because it's that whole thing with like gun kata, so they're like these super martial artist police officers in this dystopian future, and they could like just like use guns like crazy. They friggin' flip them around and like shoot it sideways and do all kinds of crazy shit.
Oh,
It's a fun movie. It's a fun movie to watch.
All right, I'll check it out. I got to just put together a giant watch list of movies and just
Yeah.
get through them.
But
anyway, to get back on track of Reboot.
Mm.
So the show was created by Gavin Blair, Ian Pearson, Phil Mitchell, and John Grace, and Brendan McCarthy ended up doing the visuals. And of course, it's a Canadian show, so it was good.
Yeah.
As far as the story was, but one of the things that I noticed was I tried to watch one episode from every season, including the series finale, which ends in a very bleak cliffhanger, and they never were able to get another season to finish that off. There was a fan driven comic book thing that they were trying to do with crowdfunding, and it kind of worked, but the fans thought that because the fans were voting on what they wanted to happen, and they ended up not liking what was given to them, which in some cases the fans really don't know what they want until you give it to them, and other times they will absolutely tell you what they want and they won't stop until they get it.
Mm-hmm.
But this system didn't work because the fans voted on the comic, and it wasn't what they just didn't really like it.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you do? But what I was noticing was, first of all, because this was the first CGI show, it's one of those things where it didn't age well it hasn't aged well over time because CGI has gotten so good now.
Yes.
But for the time, it was remarkable, and it was just, that's one of the things that made me love this show and what drew me into watching this show frequently, because it was so different from everything else and it just looked so cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I believe it's the same studio and we also saw other things after this, such as Beast Wars and the Donkey
Beast
Kong
Machines.
Country and the Donkey Kong Country show, which Donkey Kong Country was never very good, but Beast Wars was great for the time, and it has aged very poorly, the animation style.
Yeah.
Reboot, the thing that I noticed about Reboot was each season was, you could see the technology getting better each season, and it was getting more refined, so it was becoming smoothed out and less blocky over time.
Yeah.
And even the mouth movements were syncing up a little bit better with the
first season was definitely very janky. The movements were pretty janky. The mouth movements were not really as on sync as you would expect from a modern show like this.
You still catch some of the things, but this was pretty much, they were pushing things to the limit as far as what the technology could do.
Yeah.
And you have to give them the credit where credit is due. I would love to see what they would be able to do now.
Right.
If they could ever get a true show off the ground. I had heard that they had wanted to end it with a movie.
Yeah. They did do a actual there was a reboot hoy called Reboot the Guardian Code.
Yeah.
That I don't think was literally a reboot. It wasn't the same characters, really. So it was different. I didn't watch it. I actually didn't even know it existed until doing research for this episode. But I guess Megabyte is still there. But
yeah.
You have to kind of put it in the time frame of when it came out, because at that time, being a kid growing up and watching TV, like you said, this was unprecedented. We never had seen anything like this before. Most Saturday morning cartoons were just that. They were traditional animated cartoons. And also, the only CGI we really had to compare it to was video games, and Reboot was basically at the level of a PlayStation or N64 video game. And actually, I would say it's even better than N64. I would say there are probably some PlayStation games where the the movies, the cutscenes could kind of stack up with Reboot's level of animation.
Yeah, I agree. I feel
But-
like I've seen PS1 games where it's been a similar quality.
Right, but only the cutscenes. Like the actual gameplay was way blockier. So
Oh yeah.
this kind of blew our minds as kids because it was not like anything else that was on TV at the time. And I have such like brief memories of Reboot, and watching it now kind of brought back some, but it was so long ago because it came out in 1994. I probably watched it in syndication in 98 or 99 when it was on Cartoon Network. Or maybe even a little later than that, depending on, I don't know exactly when it was on Cartoon Network. But so I don't really remember it as well as some of the other shows that I watched when I was a kid, and also I didn't watch it a lot. So, but it definitely was something different, and I also had watched Beast Wars and Beast Machines too. And the Beast Wars of Beast Machines, again, that was another one where when I was a kid, I thought it looked amazing because that's the best we had at the time. Movies had good CGI, but this was a low budget kids cartoon show, and they did fairly good CGI for what they had. But I remember I watched Beast Wars recently, and it, again, has not aged well. It looks pretty bad by today's standards. As does Reboot, of course.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? Everything just got so much better.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so
actually, I just found an email from Andre Christopher Furtado.
Oh shit,
Furtado. That's his name, Furtado. He's asking us again. Hi, hey there. Just wanted to say that I love the topics that are on your podcast. Very informative indeed. Would you mind talking about the Canadian CGI series Reboot, please? Keep up the amazing work. P.S. Ken Pontac, co-creator of Bump in the Night, actually wrote the Reboot Season 3 finale episode, End Prog.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting 6 degrees of separation right there.
Yeah, pretty neat. P.P.S. Gail Matthias' surname is pronounced Matthias. Have a great week, gentlemen. This was, more than a month ago. I'm such an asshole. I have to get back to him.
Asshole.
Well, won't he be pleasantly surprised?
Yeah. You should, when you email him back, you should email him this episode in the email.
Oh,
hey,
I will.
We granted your wish.
Yes, we granted your wish. What the hell is the Calypso line? Is it your wish has been granted? Or thank you for playing? I don't know.
I gotta look it up. Great.
I am too.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time on a fancy water bottle with ultra titanium alloy metal. You're not sure why you need all that. I mean, it just holds water. But you're getting it anyway. Because if you're hiking near an active volcano and you accidentally drop the bottle into molten lava, your water will still be icy cold. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For water bottles. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
In which one? Just Metal 2, right?
Yeah, what is it? I am Calypso, and I thank you for playing Twisted Metal.
Oh, yes.
That's it. Yeah, all right. Anyway, so back to the Reboot thing. So the other thing is, the other thing that I wanted to say here is that, which I feel like I have to say it, Gavin Blair and Ian Pearson. So where they first kind of met up together was at this company called Rush's Post Production, and they started working on a bunch of stuff. And the first job that they did together was the Dire Straits music video "Money for Nothing."
Yeah.
Which if you've ever seen that video, it's a similar-ish style, a lot more primitive than
Yeah,
ReBoot,
well,
and it's just some guy in his room,
and
and then a bunch of weird stuff happens, and then Dire Straits happens,
yeah,
and the and they ended up what's his name? So Ian Pearson had this idea the night that they finished the Dire Straits video. Him and Gavin Blair are having a drink in the bar, and they're talking about what they did for this music video. And then Ian looks at him and just goes, "Dude, we could do a TV show like that. We could." And Gavin Blair's response was just, "You're insane. Like that almost killed us. There's no way that we could even do that." And then he probably figured, okay, well, he's drunk, so when we go tomorrow, he'll forget about it. But he never forgot about it. So they kept telling him, "Hey, we should really do this. We should really try this out. I think it'd be really cool." And they just kept brainstorming about it until they were finally ready to go and pitch this thing. And then the whole thing kind of got together when they met Christopher Burrow and Phil Mitchell, and they ended up just kind of putting everything together and just getting a few other people like Steve Barron and Brennan McCarthy. And they just started putting the concepts together for more things. And then somehow they get involved with Deke, which basically, we were talking about this before we got on the air, but Deke has pretty much had the market cornered on every children's show for years.
Yeah, everyone. All of the video game tie-in shows. So I'm pretty sure Captain N, the Super Mario Brothers show, Sonic the Hedgehog, every show that was based on a movie that was not appropriate for children, but they made into a children's TV show. The real Ghostbusters, although Ghostbusters is kind of okay for a kid. It's a little scary, I think, for a little kid, but they still made a TV series out of it. Godzilla, the animated series, I believe was
them.
Was it? I thought it was. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I wouldn't be surprised. And then maybe they did Men in Black, the TV show too.
They did Alf, the animated series.
That's ridiculous.
I think they did Men in Black. I'm pretty sure that. Let me see. Let me get a little farther ahead here. Sonic Underground, Extreme Dinosaurs.
Oh, I remember that. That show was awesome.
Yeah. There was a Siegfried and Roy cartoon show.
What? Why?
It's called Siegfried and Roy, Masters of the Impossible.
I have to find this, and we have to do a show on it now.
Yeah.
Siegfried and Roy, Masters of the Impossible.
Yep.
Oh my god. I hope that there's a He-Man crossover.
Jim Cummings and Tony Jay were both in it.
That's good. That must be awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, they did a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course they picked this up, and ABC backed them to do ReBoot. And the show just really took off on being its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it lives in the hearts of all of us who were 7 at the time, or 5 or younger. But yeah, like I was watching it with the missus today, and she vaguely remembered the show just being on when she was watching it. She just said, "I don't remember what this was about, but I remember watching this because this is very familiar. I remember the green people."
Yeah.
But one of the funniest things that I've ever read was the stuff about the network censorships when they were trying to pitch the show to ABC and the boards of standards and practices. The show creators were just constantly at odds with them, and they kept thinking that, and we'll get into this in a minute, because the show got canceled and brought back a few different times for where the network was just, they didn't get it, and they were over, and of course these people who are probably perverts themselves were over sexualizing everything, and they were trying to put red tape around it. So the character Dot, for example, they were claiming that she was too sexualized because the character was designed with breasts.
Oh,
Which
yeah, to a normal female.
It was just, and the creators just came to them and they just said, "Oh, this character Dot, there's something we can't have her there. She's too sexualized." And they said, "What do you mean?" "Well, she has breasts." And they just said, "Well, she's a woman." And they said, "Yeah, but could you make them not breasts?" And they said, "Well, what do you want the woman to look like? She's a woman. This is what women have."
Yeah.
And it's not like they said, "Could you make them smaller?" They were basically saying, "Get rid of the breasts."
Well,
the response to this, because it just got so ridiculous, was one of them brought in a Barbie doll, and he said, "Okay, this is a Barbie doll. We have all seen a Barbie doll. And I'm sure if any of you owned a Barbie doll or had a sister who had a Barbie doll, one of you did this at some point." And he proceeds to rip the top off of the Barbie, and he says, "Is this too sexualized?" Where, like, obviously, the Barbie has it has the modeling for breasts.
Right.
And they just said, if this is not overly sexualized for a child, then it's fine for a show. So what is the freaking problem here? And they acquiesced to it because they realized they but they kind of forced them into making this weird they called them the mono breasts of all the female characters. So they kind of just gotten this weird kind of square piece thing. It's almost like a slightly angled chest. It's almost like a chess piece that's modeled into a triangle in some way. But just the ridiculous things that they would say. Like, there was one episode where in the episode Talent Night, Dot gives Enzo, who is her brother, she gives him a kiss on the chin. And the boards of standards and practices freaked out, and they cut her just giving her brother a kiss on the chin just to say, "Hey, good job. I love you. You're my brother." As siblings just kiss each other on the cheeks just to show affection. There's nothing wrong with that. But they just said, "Oh my God, this has to be incest. We can't show this." And they were like, they are clearly not kissing on the lips. This is not incestuous in any way. And they just, and Ian Pearson just described this as one of the sickest things I've heard. So, the people at the boards of standards and practices, they're definitely into some really weird shit that probably hasn't been worked out in therapy, and that's probably how they got those jobs. I'm sure the job interview for that is there's a shrink in the room with an ink blot test and just asks them to tell them what they see. And whoever has the most perverted answer probably gets the job.
It'd be like the freaking scene in Armageddon where Steve Buscemi's like looking through all the fucking ink blots, and he's like, "A woman with large breasts, a woman with medium breasts."
Those are probably the sick bastards who work at the boards of standards and practices.
Yeah. And the stupid thing is that her original design was not sexualized in any way. Like,
no, of course not.
She's wearing a very moderate bodysuit that doesn't really even show off like curves or anything. It's just like she's wearing just like.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time on a fancy water bottle with ultra titanium alloy metal. You're not sure why you need all that. I mean, it just holds water. But you're getting it anyway. Because if you're hiking near an active volcano and you accidentally drop the bottle into molten lava, your water will still be icy cold. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time for water bottles. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Pants and a shirt, basically, with a belt. You know, it's not in any way sexualized at all.
But of course, the sick bastards at the boards of standards and practices have to take a look at this thing, and immediately their eyes are like zeroing in on, on the chest area.
Right.
These people are depraved.
They did change her design in later seasons and made it more, quote unquote risque, I guess. But that was all after it was off of ABC, I believe. And also, they were doing it for, the 90s, the late 90s was the era of edginess. So, they had to get edgier for the modern audience.
I think because it ended up going from, from season 3, they started to change the designs a little bit more to just more normal looking designs, because they weren't working with ABC at that point after season 2. They only did the first 2 seasons with ABC. And then I think it moved to a Canadian company that were the ones producing and backing it, where they just were obviously between America and Canada. The standards are very different because I'm sure in Canada and Europe and other places that are not America, they're looking for things that are legitimately concerning, like violence or cursing or anything really inappropriate for kids versus America, where these idiots just zero in on sex and they're just thinking of all of these taboos because, well, they're probably into some really dark shit. But they end up letting all of the hyper violence just go by the wayside, which makes zero sense. But then again, on the other half, we get shows like John Dillerman, which is episode 3, I believe.
That's true,
by the way. And one of our top listened to episodes about a man with a giant penis that has a mind of its own. And this is a Danish television show for children, an award-winning television show for children. Yeah. But what can you say? That show wouldn't air in the States unless it were on Adult Swim,
or like MTV Comedy Central.
Yeah, or anything like that. It would be aired as an adult program, where in Denmark, this stuff's for kids because it's very silly, and he's not doing anything sexual. Right. He's just getting into these weird situations, and he's clothed, but you can tell, what's going on. But again, two sides of the coin.
It's the same thing though, even with like when they redesigned Dot Matrix and made her quote unquote sexier, I guess you could say. All they did was basically cut off her sleeve. She's wearing a turtleneck tank top, basically. They just cut off her sleeves, but she's got like a turtleneck covering her whole up to her like neck. So there's no cleavage, there's no nothing like that. You see her bare shoulders. That's the extent of it, Well,
so what about well, they better not show any ankle.
Yeah, I know. That would be
horrible. God forbid. Clutch my pearls.
Yeah.
But they had all of these issues with the boards of standards and practices where just about everything ended up being a problem. So they had to change the script a bajillion times and the designs and all that stuff. And I mean, it's a miracle that the show still managed to be good.
Yeah.
And even make it to 4 seasons with all of this red tape.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the Talent Night episode, they pretty much just rip on the entire boards of standards, where almost everything in Enzo's like in the like almost every act that gets banned by the Prague censor because she was supposed to be the she's supposed to be the talent, she's supposed to be the network basically.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the first couple of seasons get well, and then they managed to let hexadecimal slip, which is the creepiest thing ever, which is just silly. And then we get Megabyte, who was also quite terrifying in his own way, without the voice of Tony J to make him even more lethal.
Mm-hmm.
But it was overall, it was an awesome show. Basically, what ends up happening is the user goes to play a game. The Guardians, Bob, and all the rest, they all get together and they have to make sure that the game plays out fine and that the user has a good experience and everything, and that the game doesn't go haywire, and also that the world that they live in, the mainframe, doesn't fry up or anything bad happen to the computer so that they can continue to play games. And then there's Megabyte and Hexadecimal, who are the computer viruses who are pretty much just trying to destroy everything and just reshape the mainframe in their image and just, infect everything and turn it all into a super virus.
Yep.
Which really cool concepts.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting concept, and something that you didn't really it never had really been done before. Both the CGI and the thought of these characters being inside a computer program, and I guess
right. I guess you could say Tron. Tron is the only thing that was close to it.
Yeah, and I think there was a Tron TV series at one point.
There may have been. I wouldn't be
surprised.
Probably
produced by Deke.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
But yeah, there wasn't a lot like that. And, the 90s was obviously like the cusp of the information age. So that was like when the internet was really starting to catch on with the average, person. Everybody was starting their computers in their home. You would have the quote unquote family computer. And that was when AOL was starting up, and you get those discs in the mail for free trials of AOL. But yeah, that was the time it was happening. So they really did strike when the iron was hot with ReBoot. It was the perfect timing for this show. And I think it was successful because of how unprecedented it was to see something like that. And especially for me, as someone who was a huge fan of video games growing up as a kid, it was so cool to have a show where they basically were playing a video game. Like the show was almost like watching a video game. So it was really cool. That was like, of all the things I remember from watching the show when I was a kid, that was the thing that stuck out the most to me, was that it felt like they were in a video game. And I always thought that was cool. This
was one of the few things in my entire life that has ever caused me to wake up fresh as a daisy at 6 o'clock in the morning. I remember waking up every day before school just to watch this and Beast Wars because they would follow each other.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Sometimes I would try to go back to sleep at 7 just for that last hour.
Yeah.
And then I would, of course, be late to school anyway, despite being up early.
Yeah, I always go ahead.
Oh no, you could say what you were going to say. I was just
going to say I always would get up early to watch Pokemon. That was my thing. When the original Pokemon was out, I woke up every day to watch it at 7 o'clock in the morning.
I would too. Those are fun times.
Yeah.
The problem is, for a lot of these shows, dinosaurs would come on at 9 o'clock.
Oh yeah.
And I would, at either 8:30 or 9 o'clock, dinosaurs would come on, and I would try to watch it and stall out so that I could just do it before we went to school. And my mom would freaking get pissed off at everybody because I would get sucked into watching it. Meanwhile, I had a stuffed animal of the baby from Dinosaurs where it had a pull string, and it would just say, And then at some point I got into wrestling, and we just had these stuffed animals there, which we kind of held. Yeah, we kind of kept them there because of my little brother. And so what would I do? I'd start doing wrestling moves to it, and he would do it too. And then it got to the point where poor Elmo could only hope to go a day without either getting a scorpion death drop or or a choke slam or tombstone, or and the baby from Dinosaurs would probably, like, the way that it was positioned, it could take a stunner perfectly.
I remember I had a stuffed blue Power Ranger it was fairly large. It was like half the size of Iowa, so it was, probably like,
That's pretty
I don't
fucking
know.
big.
Yeah, it was like probably like 2 feet. Like it was fairly large stuffed Power Ranger, and I used to do fucking wrestling moves on it all the time. It was like the perfect size.
Well, the kicker was, but so the abuse that this poor baby took. Somebody is definitely coming in at the wrong time in this podcast, and they're just like, "What are you listening to?" But the abuse that this poor baby took, at some point, it mangled the talk box.
Oh God!
So,
Oh my.
so you started pulling the string as it was going, and it would just turn into this like warped version, and you would just get, "I'm the baby, God loves me." So we would just sit there like, "Oh shit, this thing is possessed. You've really pissed it off now, haven't you?"
Oh my God!
But fortunately, I don't know where it is, but it never claimed my soul, to my knowledge.
Well, you never know. It might be waiting for you there at the gates.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a slow burn on this one. But ReBoot ended up getting quite a couple of cancellations, which is interesting. They did the first 2 seasons with ABC, and they pretty much just they were trying to just they pretty much were trying to just get away from them the whole time and just kind of dealing with their crap. And for a while, they wanted to just follow up they wanted to follow up the seasons with the movies, and they were going to do that for the second season, and they were going to do this movie called Terabyte Rising, and they ended up using a bunch of it for the fourth season, just, I guess, for probably budgeting constraints or time constraints or something like that, where they couldn't do it or the network wouldn't give it to them or wherever it is that they went. But they ended up getting a lot of syndication with ABC. They ended up getting syndication after they got rid of ABC, and people and like the target audience of the show started getting older as children were growing up with it. So it was moving from ages 6 to 10, let's just say, to ages 12 and older. So now they could really play with the storyline, and you could see it when you get from season 1 and 2 to season 3 and 4, is that it gets much darker. Yeah. I mean, even the ending to the show is quite dark, and there's even more things happening where Megabyte will just basically straight up kill people. And and it's kind of freaky the way he does it when his second form comes and he has the tentacles and everything, and he gets the redesign where he's even more sinister looking. But it gets darker to the point where Megabyte is able to shapeshift, and Dot Matrix almost marries him while he's disguised as another character. Yeah. And I mean, the last couple of episodes get really out of hand really quick, but they ended up changing things a little bit and making the show a little bit more mature and more interesting. And there's even some references to other games like Doom, where it'll show a character in it'll show the first person of the character, and you'll only see their weapon while they're trying to navigate a hallway or something, and it looks really cool. So they play with a lot more mature elements, and they kind of get closer to a will they, won't they with Dot and Bob. And there's characters sacrificing themselves and stuff like that. It gets pretty crazy. Then we get to season 4, and again, the show kind of got canceled again. it just sat in limbo for a while. At the end of the third season, they were going to make 2 TV movies called Demon Rising, which was going to do what was going to happen, which was going to just kind of address some of the issues in season 3, and a lot of Terabyte Rising was going to end up going into this one. And then they did, and My Two Bobs, which was also going to bring back the megabyte that they got in the cliffhanger ending, which they ended up using these 2 movies for the 2 seasons. And they ended up using it for season 4. And Toonami actually picked this up. So Toonami ended up picking up ReBoot towards the end in 2001.
Yes.
Which fit Toonami perfectly.
Yes.
To break up the anime. So it was really, it was placed pretty strategically. And then of course we end up getting the cliffhanger finale. And they also wanted to do a 13th they originally wanted the 4th season to be 3 movies that were broken up into 12 episodes. And then the 13th episode was going to be just a musical special to just send the crowd home happy.
Yeah.
And the deals and the budgets ended up changing. They got it slashed to 8 episodes. And then they wanted to add extra scenes to the DVD releases for the movie versions. And then that stuff got cut.
Riley Herbst from 2311 Racing here, and you know what grinds my gears? Waiting for coffee. But instead of counting frappes and lattes, I fire up Chumba Casino. No apps, no fuss, just fun social casino games to pass the time. By the time my coffee's ready,
Order for Riley.
I've already taken a few victory laps. Next time you're stuck waiting, make it entertaining. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time on a fancy water bottle with ultra titanium alloy metal. You're not sure why you need all that. I mean, it just holds water, but you're getting it anyway. Because if you're hiking near an active volcano and you accidentally drop the bottle into molten lava, your water will still be icy cold. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time for water bottles. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
And they just rewrote the 8th episode to just be the cliffhanger finale. And they basically were looking at whoever it was in charge of the network or whoever it was that changed all their deals and everything, and just said, okay, fine, this is the end of the show. Suck it. No resolution. So they just kind of did that and just said, and just decided, well, we're going to do whatever we want to do. You guys are assholes. This is the show. And they had the balls to do it the way that they want, and they had the balls to just end it on a bleak cliffhanger, which I thought was really gutsy, because when I was watching it, I just said, wow, it really ends that way.
Yeah.
And Gavin Blair to this day has refused to reveal what was going to happen at the end of this storyline and the last episodes, just in case they were ever able to get ReBoot to come back and to tell the story properly, which I hope they can do at some point, because I mean, we're not getting any younger. It would be really neat to see. And that's kind of where we get with, when the company, which we haven't even addressed all this time, the company that made ReBoot was called Mainframe Entertainment, of course. And they ended up getting renamed to Rainmaker Animation because they got bought by the Rainmaker Income Fund, which weird. So they ended up doing that, and they did this thing with Zeros to Heroes. And again, Rainmaker had announced to make 3 ReBoot movies, and they planned to do that. And they also, like I said, let the fans choose what they wanted to do with the movies. And they also were contributing to the ReBoot webcomic. Fans were submitting art, and they were really being a part of this crowdfunding kind of thing. And what ended up happening was the ReBoot Arrival comic, and it didn't really it didn't really work out. So they kind of just never really did a whole much into the show, and it just kind of turned into the Reboot fan site now.
Yeah.
So you can go and watch. You could have used the webcomic. You could have viewed the webcomic on here, and on 2012, it's pretty much gone. And they ended up just never really doing anything with this. The film trilogy isn't going to happen. We did get the Guardian Code thing that was that happened on Netflix.
Yeah.
In 2018. But it was just like you said, it was very different. I didn't watch any of this. It didn't change anything.
Just from looking at it though, like all the characters are different. I think Megabyte's the only returning character from the original series. So
yeah, and I mean Tony J had passed away at that point.
Yeah.
So how much of it are you really even getting?
Yeah.
But it is kind of funny. I think in the talent show episode, the blob people from the Dire Straits videos, Money for Nothing, they ended up. I think that they ended up in that episode or one of the Reboot episodes.
Really, that's hilarious.
Yeah, they just threw them in as a reference. As I think they called themselves the Brothers in Arms, which is the name of the album.
Yeah,
it was on, which is just kind of cool. But anyway, they went on to like. I really hope that at some point they can make the finished Reboot stuff, but I have no idea how you could do that.
Yeah,
you can watch everything on Pluto TV, by the way, which is a free.
You could also
it's
also just on YouTube for free.
Yeah.
Also, that's where I watched it on YouTube. They have all the episodes.
I watched it on Pluto, which I believe I used to watch the Blackula movies too.
Yeah, Blackula was on Pluto, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they have like a whole blaxploitation channel. It's pretty freaking great.
Yeah.
Like Pluto TV is another one of those sleeper
It's a good one. Yeah.
streaming services because
Like
they got a bunch of
2B.
weird stuff on it. Yes, there's Pluto and 2B.
I think Reboot overall was really important in the history of CGI cartoons because it really spawned a whole genre of cartoons in the 90s and 2000s. There were so many that came after that very clearly were influenced by Reboot. And of course, you had ones that were actually made by the same company, like Beast Wars and Beast Machines. But then you had, as I had mentioned before, The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. You had Code Lyoko, Cubix, which was like a robot, cube robot.
Oh, I vaguely remember Cubix.
Yeah. Which was actually a South Korean animated series and was brought over to the US by 4Kids. But I mean, very clearly you could see the influence from Reboot in the animation style and just the fact that it was a CGI show on Saturday morning cartoons.
You know what? I remember the Burger King toys for Cubix because it would make the full Cubix robot when you got all the pieces.
Yeah, it was a really cool promotion. I fucking remiss when McDonald's and Burger King toys were actually cool and not just cheap pieces of crap.
Yeah.
You know? I mean maybe they were cheap pieces of crap still, but they at least were like not stupid. They were like a real toy. Now it's just literally a piece of molded plastic essentially.
Yeah, they were. They tried back then.
Well, and not for nothing, but when they did the promotion with Hot Wheels, if you get the girl toy, you would get an actual Barbie doll, like a miniature Barbie doll, and the boy toy, you actually got a real Hot Wheels car. It was a die-cast Hot Wheels car, like you would buy in the toy store. So you were getting like a real toy. It wasn't like a piece of shit.
Yeah,
but those were the days. Good, cool prizes and Happy Meals.
It's really funny because Reboot was early. It beat Toy Story by a year, which I feel like a lot of people don't know. But Reboot aired in '94. Toy Story happened in '95.
Well, and Pixar was working on Toy Story in that time. It wasn't like
no, it wasn't like they saw it.
Oh shit! Reboot came out. Let's make fucking Toy Story.
No, it's not like Google and fucking ChatGPT where they have to chase whatever they're doing now.
Right.
No, there was no scrambling. They just happened to be working on similar projects, but the Reboot people were able to get it out faster because it was a cartoon or a TV show versus a full-on movie. And also, you can see the difference because Toy Story, because Pixar had all of the Disney and Steve Jobs money from Apple.
So the animation is amazing.
Yeah, which Reboot, it got I would say that, well, I wouldn't say that it ever got that close to Toy Story's level of animation, but it was you could see it getting there by the end of the fourth season.
Like I said, it was acceptable for the time period. Looking back on it,
Right.
it's very dated. But that's like saying, "Oh, I'm going to play a PS1. I'm going to play Spyro the Dragon on PS1 and expect the graphics to be as good as the remaster." It's like, no, you're obviously the graphics are going to be bad. You're playing it on purpose because it's what you want to have the nostalgia feeling and play the original. So
Yeah.
going back and looking at it, yeah, it's the animation's pretty bad, but if you're just watching it for the nostalgia factor, then it doesn't matter because, that's the whole point.
Exactly. But I still got a kick out of watching all of these old episodes and just really getting a blast of the past there, and it was
Yeah.
it was so neat to see
Yeah.
because and I think I appreciated it more because it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
You could see that there were still some programming errors. You could still see
No.
that, like, you could see how hard they were trying
Yeah, it
and
was definitely a
how
labor
far
of love.
how far they got. Yeah, exactly. Like, even though the animation wasn't smooth, wasn't super smooth or anything, and there were still very primitive movements. The characters are just sliding
Yeah.
in some ways. I didn't care. The hair wasn't moving or anything like that, or the shininess was just a little awkward. I kind of loved that.
Yeah.
Or things were a little too chrome. Like, they're like all the little imperfections. I feel like I feel that they made the show as memorable as it is because it's. I looked at, like, when I was watching it, the first thing I thought was, okay, this is pretty dated. But the second thing that I thought was, this is perfect.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I just wish that we had gotten a proper ending, but it's also kind of fun to speculate on what that ending would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I might watch a few more of these.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely fun. And
yeah,
I feel like it's really underrated. I think while the animation has kind of.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time on a fancy water bottle with ultra titanium alloy metal. You're not sure why you need all that. I mean, it just holds water. But you're getting it anyway. Because if you're hiking near an active volcano and you accidentally drop the bottle into molten lava, your water will still be icy cold. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time for water bottles. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Aged a little bit, has aged a little poorly. I feel like the show itself has gotten better with age.
Yeah. I could see that. Even though a lot of the lines are kind of cheesy with the tech lingo, but
they are. That's part of the charm now.
Well, yeah, and again, you gotta think about that. You're watching a children's show. It's supposed to be hokey and silly.
Right, or at least the first two seasons, and then the third and fourth season, then you're like, ooh,
yeah,
gets a little touchy here.
Yeah.
I like it. And it's just every time you hear Tony J, you just go, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad guy. That's a scary guy. I love it. He was just so good.
Mm-hmm.
So Tony, like, if you got to have a voice actor Rushmore, Tony J has to be on it.
Oh yeah, he's definitely. If you look at his resume and what he's been in, like, absolutely, he's up there.
Yeah, I mean, just being Frollo alone in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which for the most part wasn't one of Disney's best animated movies, but his performance as Frollo is absolutely diabolical. I love him as Frollo. He's one of the most terrifying villains that Disney has ever had, because there are people like that. There are real Frollos.
Yeah.
There were real Frollos at the time that did shit like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes him such an iconic Disney villain in an otherwise forgettable movie, is Tony Jay's performance.
Yeah.
It's very grounded, his performances.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you see that as much.
No. Yeah, I agree. His and even his like more obscure roles when he was doing like cartoon shows, you know, he always plays like he's like the perfect character actor as a voice actor, you know, like, you know, you have character actors in movies that are always, they're in every movie. It's like, oh, that guy, I know that guy. He's always in this movie, that movie, this movie, whatever. And I think that's him, except with animation, because it's like he'll just pop out of nowhere and you'll be like, oh, I know who this is. You know, I recognize the voice. He's got, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there was one thing that I would always remember about the show, other than Bob's hair being too shiny, it was Megabyte.
Mm-hmm.
And I love his final design when he's a little corroded from everything and he's getting the shapeshifter abilities and the tentacles. He almost reminds me of a Predator in a way. Because he gets that crest in the back, and or actually more, well, I guess kind of like a alien Predator kind of thing. He just reminds me of that sort of design. It's almost like he gets a little more Giger-esque, and it looks really, to me, it looks a little bit more chilling, and I like it.
Yeah.
But that's all I got to say about ReBoot. I hope that we get a real show again, and I hope that, you know, it would be really neat if Gavin Blair or Ian Pearson or Phil Mitchell or any of those guys just ended up finding this, and, you know, if they wanted to have a conversation and probably correct some of the errors that we've made in this show, or just talk about it, that would be really cool. As well as the fellow from Bump in the Night to just talk about that kind of thing. You know, I mean, not that I think it will definitely happen, but it will be kind of cool for something like that to happen. Mr. Ken Pontac. But we want to thank Andre Christopher Furtado for recommending this show and commenting as much as he has on the Bump in the Night episode, and knowing probably way too much about this stuff than average people. But very cool. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anything that you got to add to this, Rob?
Nope, that's it. I think you said it best.
Oh, cool. I hope that they get to finish that show at some point and we can see what the ending was. But who knows? Maybe I don't know. Maybe if people decided to donate way too much money to the show on either Patreon or buy me a coffee, and we just happen to just get multiple millions of dollars to give to the ReBoot creators to just open up a tiny animation studio and just give us the finale, that would be something that wouldn't it? And, not to mention a little bit for you and I to just retire off of, because wouldn't that be lovely? So if you would find it in your heart, dear audience, this is me putting my hat and hand out and walking around the internet with a collection plate. Help us retire and also get this show to conclude properly. Maybe they can finally make all of those reboot movies like they always wanted. Who knows? But anyway, this has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.
Having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
Riley Herbst from 2311 Racing here, and you know what grinds my gears? Waiting for coffee. But instead of counting frappes and lattes, I fire up Chumba Casino. No apps, no fuss, just fun social casino games to pass the time. By the time my coffee's ready,
Order for Riley.
I've already taken a few victory laps. Next time you're stuck waiting, make it entertaining. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.